Warning: World Weary Podcasts occasionally discusses mature themes and uses colorful language.
Welcome to episode 13 of World Weary, a strange, supernatural podcast brought to you from deepest, darkest Somerset. There, inside a dark, dark house, is a dark, dark room. And in that dark, dark room is a dark, dark cupboard. And inside that dark, dark cupboard are two ghastly and ghoulish podcasters. I'm the British one, Violet Starr.
I'm the American one, Cassiopeia Walker.
And this is our cringy podcast introduction. Frickin' rate, review, subscribe. We're on iTunes. You can find all of our stuff on our website, www.worldwearypodcast.com. Check it all out. I'm still feeling mentally and emotionally drained from our visit to the circus a few days ago. A clown came into my work and gave me some free tickets to the circus, as is my life, and Cassie was able to come along. So you've lost your circus virginity.
What a way to put it. Yes. I've never been to the circus before, of any kind of circus, so I was really excited to get the invite. And right after work on Thursday, I believe, I went to the circus for the first time. It was a magical experience. It was really cool. Family event, wasn't it? Sisters and little boys.
Yeah, it was like a family-run, small British circus.
It was really cool.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, I'm very chuffed to have taken you to your first circus because I love circuses so much, and just the atmosphere and the general aesthetic of a circus is like such an intrinsic puzzle piece of my personality. So I think you're one of the few friends I have that I knew would truly appreciate the weird beauty and thrill of the circus. And it was a really cute, intimate circus. Like traditional and like very whimsical, and I think everything you want from a small circus.
Yeah, there were acrobatics and really cool music. It was spellbinding. It very much felt like a spell was being cast over the audience. The audience wasn't very rowdy. It was early. No one was drinking. So it was sort of like
it was like a weekday, small, very small performance, very small audience as well. But it was like going back in time, I think, in a way. Like it was, I don't know, it was just something kind of old-fashioned about it, you know, minus the animal cruelty and other problematic freak shows and stuff.
Which we did not witness. There were no animals part of this circus, which I was really happy about because I was nervous.
In every other respect, it was like a olden days circus kind of thing. And this is, I don't know, this is what I liked about it. It was, you know, I realised after going to that I don't need these like fucking Cirque du Soleil stadium circuses with like 200 Olympian gymnasts making a pyramid on the back of a freaking bike, you know, or I also don't want one of these like arty fake hipster circuses with like beards and amateur burlesque. I want the proper, intimate, traditional little circus. If the clown doesn't have a full face of makeup, then at the very least, I need him to be a slightly overweight Eastern European man who's good with kids. That's what I need. That's my requirement.
It was so great. There were so many, it felt layered, like you could see the characters behind their own characters, the circus. They're like the Miller sisters, and they each have their own act, and there were a few surprise acts that I wasn't expecting to see. And it was very intimate, as you said, and just a snapshot of something I think is a dying breed of entertainment. And it was just very wholesome and felt unique, especially to this country as well.
Yeah, it was a very British circus, I suppose. Very British.
The clown act was very British. It was funny.
And it also reminds me, it like takes me back to when I was a kid, and like we would go, you know, maybe I was like around the time I was like 10 years old, we go to the circus. It's like a family kind of outing with my mum and maybe her friends and their kids, and we would always come away totally inspired to play at circuses for like the whole summer holiday. I remember there was one summer where literally me and my sister and our neighbours, who were also little girls about the same age, we performed circus acts in our back garden like the whole summer holiday.
Oh,
I
wow.
was like hanging upside down on this swing set, 10 years old, wearing an adult woman's purple velvet leotard from
Oh,
the
dear.
80s with like a lot that had a lot of like room, let's say. God, it must have looked a mess. But I always came away inspired by the magic of the circus. So it's good that you've captured a little bit of that now.
Yeah, I felt like a kid for a very short time.
So, enough of clowns and
Oh,
back
no.
to ghosts.
Oh no!
So each week we take turns to host an episode, and because this is the 13th episode,
Ooh.
I have picked the spooky topic of ghosts. We haven't gone full ghost yet.
No,
We
we've
touched
flirted.
on it.
Yeah,
We flirted, yes, exactly. I think in the haunted decor episode we go into a little bit, but we're going to go there today. I know you have some ghost stories. If you guys listened to our first episode, Baby's First Mystery, Cassie talks about the poltergeist at her grandma's house, but I know she's got more experiences to talk about, and I've also got a couple of things, personal mysteries that I want to chat about. So we're going to make some time to talk about those at the end, and maybe get a little bit deeper into the theory side of stuff. So also make sure that you check out our Instagram at World Weary Podcast or our Twitter at World Weary Pod for relevant pictures and photos from today's episode, because there's going to be a lot. On to my story. This being our first full-on ghost episode, once again, I'm referencing those retro paranormal mystery books I had as a child.
Oh yeah.
And when I think ghosts, my mind immediately goes back to this photograph that I remember. I would look at this photo and think, that's it. That's a real ghost. Cassie,
Don't
are
know.
you ready? Here is the photo. Do you recognise that?
I've seen the woman on the
definitely seen
stairs,
it.
yeah.
You've definitely seen it.
I've seen this, yeah, and it is a very convincing photo.
Very famous, very, very famous photograph of a ghost. So today, we're going to talk about the story behind the photograph. Ooh.
Strap in.
Raynham Hall, Norfolk, England. A grand country house. Took a long time to build, but it was basically finished in 1637. What's going on in 1637, Cassie, in England? Do you know?
Plague.
Not quite. Charles I was king. The English Civil War was on the horizon, so Oliver Cromwell stuff happening.
Oh.
People be wearing ruffs and like massive white collars, funny hats with feathers.
Oh, Renaissance area? No, I'm way off. Sorry. It was. I took.
You get the vibe. You'll get the vibe. It's right. You're not native. It's fine. I
took AP American history. I could have opted for European history, but I was like, fuck that. I regret my decision.
You're not expected to be qualified. It's okay. So that's the sort of time period it's built. Men had like the weird goatee and moustache thing and the like curly hair.
Got you.
It then becomes the seat of the Townsend family for like 400 years. In fact, I think it still is their seat. So it's their like family home for this very old, blue-blooded, aristocratic family.
Lovely.
So, as you know, you then have to give a house a few hundred years of death and emotions before a ghost can be born there.
Of course.
So, the first reported sighting of a ghost at Raynham Hall.
Ugh, I'm glad it's daytime.
We're talking about 200 years after it was built, 1835. The family and residents at Raynham Hall are celebrating Christmas, and amongst their guests staying for the Christmas celebrations was a Colonel Loftus. One evening, Colonel Loftus and another guest called Hawkins were retiring to their bedrooms when they see a strange woman in the corridor. The next night, Colonel Loftus sees the woman again, and this time he sees her so clearly that he is able to sketch a fairly detailed picture of her. He described her as an aristocratic-looking woman, but oddly, she was wearing a dated brown dress. Fashion crime. And thus, she came to be known as the Brown Lady. However, there were one or two things about this woman that the Colonel found disturbing. It appeared to him that she was missing her eyes. She had empty eye sockets, and her face also glowed with an eerie light. So there's no mistaking he saw a ghost. The Colonel's sighting of this woman frightened the guests and staff in the house so much that it actually resulted in the permanent departure of several household staff.
That's pretty serious. That's scary.
The next recorded sighting of the Brown Lady was the following year, 1836, by another guest at Raynham Hall, a popular and respected British naval officer and novelist, Captain Frederick Marryat. By this point, the family at Raynham Hall had identified a haunted bedroom, where the apparition seemed to hang out, and there's a very old painting of a woman hung in there, which they believed to be the ghost. The captain requested to spend the night in this room to prove that the ghost didn't exist, and that the whole Brown Lady thing was a hoax or myth put about by local smugglers to keep people away from the area.
That's a good idea.
The captain fucking sleeps with a loaded revolver under his pillow. Yes.
That's
1836. Drunk, rich, naval officers passing out in bed with a gun after a day of drinking and billiards.
No.
That was the life. He sleeps in the room for 2 nights like this. No ghost.
excellent.
On the 3rd night, he's getting undressed for bed in his room when 2 young men that are also staying at Raynham Hall, in fact, I think they're the nephews of the Baronet Townsend, so relations of the family that live at Raynham Hall.
Okay.
They knock on his door and, as you do, ask him to come over to their room and give an opinion on a new gun they had just purchased that had arrived from London. I suppose being a fricking naval captain guy, he would have some sort of good opinion on it. So he willingly obliged to do so, but he took his revolver with him just in case he were to meet the Brown Lady. He walks to their room, looks at the gun, and then the young men jokingly accompany him back to his bedroom, kind of joking that just in case, he were to encounter the Brown Lady in the corridor, they better escort him.
We'll keep you safe, sir. Don't worry, Captain. We got you, buddy.
So what follows is an account written by the captain's daughter on what happened as the captain was escorted back to his room by these 2 young men.
Oh no.
The corridor was long and dark, for the lights had been extinguished, but as they reached the middle of it, they saw the glimmer of a lamp coming towards them from the other end. "One of the ladies going to visit the nurseries," whispered the young Townsends to my father. Now, the bedroom doors in that corridor faced each other, and each room had a double door with a space between, as is the case in many old-fashioned houses. My father, as I have said, was in shirt and trousers only, which is basically the same as being naked in 1836. And his native modesty made him feel uncomfortable, so he and the 2 young men slipped within one of the outer doors in order to conceal themselves until the lady should have passed by.
Sounding suspicious.
I have heard him describe how he watched her approaching nearer and nearer through the chink of the door until, as she was close enough for him to distinguish the colours and style of her costume, he recognised the figure as the facsimile, aka the spitting image, of the portrait of the Brown Lady.
Oh no!
He had his finger on the trigger of his revolver, and was about to demand it to stop and give the reason for its presence there, when the figure halted of its own accord before the door behind which he stood.
No.
And holding the lighted lamp she carried to her features, grinned in a malicious and diabolical manner at him. So basically the ghost held the lamp up to its face and made a creepy smile.
Oh no.
This act so infuriated my father, who was anything but lamb-like in disposition, that he sprang into the corridor with a bound and discharged the revolver right in her face. The figure instantly disappeared, the figure at which for several minutes 3 men had been looking together, and the bullet passed through the outer door of the room on the opposite side of the corridor and lodged in the panel of the inner one. My father never attempted again to interfere with the Brown Lady of Raynham. So the captain basically shot the ghost in the face.
Oh my gosh, what if it was just a lady that was a bit, bored in the night?
Well, this is the thing, is like the ghost, at first they thought it was just like some
A
servant
cleaning lady.
checking the nurseries where like the babies were kept or something.
Oh,
And, with a lamp. And then, so because he's like not dressed to be seen and by any lady, even a servant woman, they
immodest.
so they jumped behind the door as you would have done. But it's when this woman walks right up to them while they're waiting behind this door, they realise that it is this freaking ghost in this old-fashioned dress with this creepy ghost face.
Yeah, scary.
So he shoots it in the face and it disappears. Possibly quite out of character for a British naval officer who has a reputation for bravery and level-headedness, which makes the act of shooting a ghost in the face kind of hard to believe. And, maybe there was some drink involved. They were partying there for a few days, basically. I don't know. So there is no official report of the Brown Lady again until 1926, when Lady Townsend states that her son and his friend saw the ghost on the staircase of the house, and they positively identified it as the woman in the portrait that was hung in the haunted room. Then, in 1936, a photographer for Country Life magazine, known as Captain Provand, and his assistant, they come to Raynham Hall to take photographs for an article. So Country Life magazine, still going actually. I think it's kind of like a society magazine. So it's like a thing for writing articles about the rich and upper class generally. Or at least back then it was very much just about documenting the upper class, like debutantes and stuff like that. So they are taking photographs of the staircase in the house when they notice a vapoury, ethereal veiled form materialising and descending down the stairs. They quickly take a picture, and when it's developed, that photograph of the Brown Lady appears, and they actually published it in Country Life magazine, and it quickly becomes a very, very famous story.
Yeah, sensational.
At the time, several paranormal investigators said there was no evidence that the photographers had faked the picture in any way, that it was a true photograph of a ghost. However, there are plenty of others, including photography boffins and magicians, who have pointed out that there are issues with the photograph, evidence of double exposure or like tampering. To be honest, it looks like a statue of the Virgin Mary has just been superimposed over a photograph of the stairs. Also, the photographers themselves were quirky characters, and by the sounds of it, they were a bit of a shady duo.
Oh, lovely.
So Captain Provand, he wasn't really a captain.
I knew when you said, I don't know why, but I knew when you said it.
A photographer for Country Life magazine.
Why is he named Captain?
Going around. So he had just been a photography tutor to the British Navy during the war.
Oh, God, he's gone full Scientology, Elron.
He had once been a pretty successful society photographer, aka taking photos of the upper classes and the rich. But he'd fallen on hard times. He'd actually gone bankrupt at one point. So this was like he was slowly trying to make a comeback. And his assistant was a very eccentric serial entrepreneur,
Oh.
risk taker, known chancer.
Are these self-made titles? He wrote these himself. It's on his gravestone.
And he was married to a successful London psychic called Madame Shearer, who read the palms of the rich and famous in the 30s.
Well, I mean, there goes the photo for me. I never looked up the background, but there it goes. No, there it goes. Goodbye.
So, whatever the truth is, since the brown lady was photographed in the 30s, there have been no further reported sightings. But what could the identity of the brown lady be, if true? Witnesses stated that she looked like this portrait that was hanging in the, haunted room in Raynham Hall. And that portrait was of a former resident of the hall, Lady Dorothy Walpole. Lady Dorothy had a pretty tragic life for an aristocrat. No. In 1713, she got married to Charles Townshend, who obviously lived and was born and died at Raynham Hall. She was his second wife, and he was known for having a terrible, violent temper.
Oh, great.
They had 7 children together.
Oh, no.
Charles then finds out that Dorothy had had an affair before they were married with the first Marquess of Wharton, who was a known ladies' man who would try and bed any women that visited, and his wife was like a bit weird and supposedly just turned a blind eye to his dirty dealings. Charles also finds out that this adultery had continued during Dorothy's marriage to him. However, it gets even more sinister because another aristocrat at the time had reported that it was the Countess Wharton, so the wife of this serial adulterer Marquess ladies' man.
Okay.
Who, and she's supposedly turning a blind eye to his rapist ways.
Oh, he's a rapist?
Well.
Well, yeah, basically.
So the Countess, his wife, had actually trapped the now married Dorothy into a situation where she was going to basically be raped by the Marquess Wharton, because she invites the married Dorothy over to stay for a few days, knowing that, Dorothy had previously been the lover of her husband when Dorothy was unmarried, and knowing that her rapey husband, the Marquess Wharton, would not let Dorothy leave until he'd had his way with her.
Oh, dear.
So it seems like the Countess Wharton basically set Dorothy up. Once she was married, once Dorothy got married to this angry guy, she entraps Dorothy for this adulterous encounter by inviting her over. And then the Countess spread the story afterwards. Maybe because she was pissed that when Dorothy had been unmarried, she had been the lover of the Marquess Wharton. Who knows? This revelation of infidelity enrages Dorothy's husband, the angry Townshend guy, and he locks her up in a room in Raynham Hall as punishment, and then performs a mock funeral for her to pretend that she had died. So he essentially fakes her death, and she's locked up in the hall. Apparently she officially dies, aged 40, I'm assuming locked in this room, from smallpox. However, there is a rumour that she wasn't even locked up in the hall, or, her death wasn't faked in any way. There were rumours that he actually murdered her after finding out about these infidelities.
Probably.
And she died as a result of a broken neck, having been pushed down the grand staircase.
That's most likely.
So maybe this thing about locking her up and faking a funeral was all a weird cover for her murder. So, that was the story of the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. So why would I like this story so much? A lot of British ghost stories are typically about, the ghost of a lady elegantly haunting a stately home or a castle, something like the grey lady or the white lady or the lady in black, and they're very sad, romantic stories of women, you know, jumping out of the window on the eve of their wedding and haunting forevermore in a floaty white dress. That's the stereotype.
Yeah.
And it's almost kind of boring. It's never, you know, the ghost of an old man shuffling around the kitchen at night in his pants and slippers. But I think the story of the brown lady actually really resonated with me because we have a grey lady ghost story in my own family. So, you know, from quite a young age, you know, whenever I was having a family meal with my grandparents or some kind of occasion, I used to love asking questions like, has anyone ever seen a ghost? Does anyone have a ghost story? Do you know anyone who ever saw a ghost? That was what I was interested in finding out.
Of course.
And this was the classic family ghost tale passed down to me. My great-grandmother, she was called Hilda Maria, and this is on my mum's side, so she was my grandfather's mother. Do you want to see pictures of her?
Yeah, sure. Hilda Marie.
Hilda Maria.
Oh, wow. Cool. She's really pretty and has like a badass hairstyle.
Check this pic.
It's epic. Oh, you better work. That's really cool.
I'll upload these for you guys to see. My great-grandmother, when she was a young woman, so before she got married, she was a lady's companion. That was her job. To the wife of a wealthy wine merchant in a big grand house in Suffolk. And it was like a live-in position. So, you know, she had her own quarters in the house. And this was a really long time ago because there are some very long generations in my family. A lot of people had children at like 50 and stuff. So there's we have some very long gaps. So my great-grandparents were Victorians. They were born way before 1901. So she did this job, we think, you know, probably like her early 20s, which would have been around 1912 or 1915.
Okay.
You know, because she was married and having children by the 1920s. So this was very...
Really Downton Abbey.
Yeah, very, very Downton Abbey. So the house, you know, where she worked, where she was this lady's companion, was haunted by a ghost, a grey lady.
Oh, scary.
And I think it was sort of suggested that, you know, everyone that lived and worked at this house, they knew there was this apparition of a woman that would appear from time to time, but this being the early 1900s, you just got on with it. Everywhere was probably haunted.
Exactly.
So my great-grandmother, Hilda, she actually witnessed the ghost herself on a number of occasions. She remembered waking up in bed sometimes and seeing this grey lady standing at the foot of her bed looking at her.
No!
But, you know, on the light-hearted side of things, you know, she reckoned the spirit was perfectly benevolent.
Okay.
A gentle soul, not a malicious...
Hanging around.
Yeah, not a malicious or upset ghost in any way. It was just swanning around, kind of
Forever.
looking at stuff and being very chill and happy. Hearing that story, yeah, it just... I think that's why these grey lady, brown lady, white lady stories are so special for me, because we have that little tale being passed down in our family too.
It's very much part of British culture, really, though. I reckon anybody doesn't have to look far for a family story, but yours probably more so than a lot. You've got an ooky spooky family.
Well, this is what I'm going to say about British ghosts. We're classy in life, classy in death, and classy beyond the grave as ghosts.
Today, my story or stories are set in Japan, and you lived in Japan for 2 years, Violet.
Yeah.
So I'm going to recruit you to help me with some pronunciations. I'm going to be talking about Kasa-obake.
Yeah, that's right.
Kasa-obake, or in English, umbrella ghost, which is a ghost or a yokai.
Yep.
From Japanese folklore. I'm not sure how much you already know about this topic yourself. Do you know about...
I know a bit, but I've never really researched it in depth, so
Perfect.
I'm here to listen.
I figure you've probably been exposed to it and know some of the references, but haven't gone balls deep into it. I never say that. Why did I say that? Okay. I'm going to take you back to the Edo period.
Edo.
I don't... You represented every listener just then. I might keep that in. I'm going to take you back to the Edo period, so between 1603 and 1868. This is regarded as a pretty sweet time in Japan with a lot of growth and stability. And in this period, there were actually Yu-Gi-Oh! Style collectible card games.
Ooh.
Did you know this?
No.
I didn't know this until I started researching, so I'm very excited to tell
They
people.
obviously have a long history of trading card games.
Exactly. So there was all the collectible card games that involved those monsters, yokai karuta.
Yeah.
I know I'm late to the Japanese history game, but this actually blew my mind. So it connected some dots as far as in my head why the games that they have for monsters and collections are so great. And it's because they've refined the process over hundreds of years. So here are a few pictures of OG Kasa-obake from the collectible card game. Let me introduce you to the Umbrella Ghost.
Oh boy. I'm sure I've seen this one before, but I don't know anything about the Umbrella
Here's
Ghost.
one of the official cards.
Oh.
So why don't
Crazy.
you describe what you're seeing?
Okay.
Because they do have a few different types.
Okay, first up, I'm seeing a closed umbrella, like a closed parasol with what looks like an eye stuck to the outside of it and two like big bird claw, like monster feet poking out the bottom. So it's like a like umbrella Muppet like umbrella Muppet puppet monster.
Exactly.
That's the vibe.
There are a lot of variations of the yokai, but before I give you the official description, generally it's an umbrella-looking creature, and it is said that they are umbrellas that have to have survived for at least 100 years. And sometimes it has the face of a person and one leg. Sometimes it's just an eye and a gaping mouth with a gross tongue. But no matter what, they're mischievous, trickster-like ghosts.
So it's like,
Japanese poltergeist.
okay, so chuck out your old parasol. Like, don't have a load of like dirty old parasols just like withering away on your porch. Put them in the bin or burn them so they don't turn into a monster in 100 years.
Exactly. Well, you kept to do that with... I'll get to it. They also, depending on what you read, can be very dangerous.
Ooh.
You can see these all around pop culture from Power Rangers. It was an enemy in Power Rangers.
I've totally
Remember it?
seen that. We need to find have you got a screenshot of that?
I've got a picture of it, not here, but I have it.
Yeah, we'll definitely share that because that's
It
hilarious.
blew my mind. Also, Mario, the triangle with the eye that you stomp on.
Yeah, okay.
Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a version, I believe. Lots of manga and animes feature it. It's everywhere and you don't even realize. It's so crazy. The classification, for the nerds out there, the classification of ghosts that this falls under is the tools ghost category in Japan. This is called
Tsukumogami. Tsukumogami?
Tsukumogami. So Tsukumogami, thank you, Violet, is
This
a
is
tool.
a Japanese lesson today.
Yeah, that's why I was excited. I wanted to go somewhere different other than America. I wanted to go somewhere interesting and maybe learn something, and I totally learned some weird stuff. So hopefully the listeners don't know this stuff, so they can go around telling their weird friends that love it as
Go
well.
find Japanese people and just say the words that you learned today, like umbrella ghost, umbrella ghost.
Yokai.
Don't. You may get punched.
All right, so basically, it's a tool that has picked up a spirit, otherwise known as a kami. Is that right?
Yeah.
And because it is possessed by this kami, it can do all sorts of crazy things. It's also believed in Japanese folklore that a tool that ages can simply become an apparition sometimes. So that's scary.
You know what? This is making me think, like, because I'm always thinking about why. Why would people come up with, clear your tools away or they become a ghost? Japanese people are so good at coming up with stories and mythologies they're already such a tidy and clean culture, you guys all must know this. So I just love that they have like a freaking ghost mythology that's like if you keep, if you hoard old tools and like rubbish and stuff and don't clear it away and make it all look neat and, you chuck all your old shit away. Don't hoard rubbish,
It will
basically.
become a ghost.
Because otherwise it might become a demon ghost.
Or pick up a spirit or a demon. So watch out for that haunted chainsaw.
Yeah.
So the Kasa-obake like to sometimes scare you by licking you with their massive tongue.
Ugh.
They can be disruptive around the house, so if you hear like clutter moving around, it's probably your haunted umbrella. Sometimes they can appear on a rainy day and if you see it, you won't be able to move. You won't be able to move your feet for some time. One type, the Yuregasa,
That sounds right.
has
Yuregasa.
has one leg and the one eye thing going on. It appears on windy days, and if it catches you, it will use the force of the wind to blow you into the sky. And I'm about to tell you 2 examples of the various Kasa-obake that you might encounter if you go to Japan. On the coast of Japan, a typhoon raged. Winds and rains made it almost impossible to be outside. Mr. Okaza had been stuck at work. As much as he tried to call his house, it was no use. Phone lines were down and reception was non-existent. He had to get home to see if his family were all right. His worry only grew more and more as he sat at the office. Not able to wait any longer, Osaka grabbed his coat and hat and headed for the door. His coworkers tried to stop him, but it was too dangerous outside, especially with all the people going missing and like the dangers of the typhoon. Ignoring their pleads and warnings, Osaka raced out of the door. Braving the storm, he made his way towards his house. But outside his house, he saw something in his yard. His vision was a bit off due to the rain, the torrent of rain hitting his face. Suddenly, he felt very strange. When he looked down, he realized his feet were off the ground. He looked back over to the yard and his eyes widened with fear. It was the Yuregasa, the very thing his coworkers had been warning him about. He flailed and yelled, but his protests were no use. He was thrown into the sky. Hearing the commotion outside, his wife raced to the window. When she looked through, she saw nothing. She swore she heard a scream, but maybe it was just the storm. She looked up and saw something falling from the sky. Then something hit the ground in the front yard. It was the limp body of her husband, now broken and his face full of fear. The Yuregasa had claimed another life.
Oh, shit.
So that's the one that flies you up in the air. Now, here's the danger of the one that makes your feet stay still.
Okay.
While tracking through Japan, Tokugawa had stopped in the side of the road in the Higashiwa region. He had been driving for 6 hours and he needed a break. He got out of his car to stretch his legs and to let the warm summer rain run over him. When he went to grab his water from the car, he accidentally dropped it, and it rolled to the middle of the road. He ran to get it. He picked it up and looked in front of him. There was something off in the distance. It was the umbrella ghost. He squinted to see what it was, and he froze. There stood an umbrella, but this was no ordinary umbrella. It stood on 2 legs. It stood there, and Tokugawa couldn't take his eyes off it or even move. A truck was driving down the road. When he finally looked up, he noticed someone standing there. He slammed on his brakes, the driver, but he knew it was too late. Tokugawa heard the oncoming truck, and his eyes grew wide. He went to move, but his legs wouldn't move. He flailed frantically, but the truck wasn't slowing. He looked back to the umbrella and noticed that it was in fact smirking at him. Suddenly it disappeared, and he was free, but it was too late. The truck had taken his life. So yeah, those are 2, it was hard to find the sources of those 2 stories, so take them as you will. They're mainly urban legends.
I love the variety of ghosts and the powers that, like, each ghost has, like, a specific power.
It's great.
This really is the OG Pokemon, isn't it?
Yeah. Gathering of 100 Supernatural Tales is another game popular during that period. And in this game, it tells ghost stories. And the Kasa-obake originates from the need for storytellers to come up with another new monster, another new yokai to fulfill the needs of the game, having 100 ghosts.
They love novelty.
In other words, it's most likely very made up, in order to create 100 card, and the goal was in that time period to collect all of them and the most you could, and then you win the game essentially. So there are these collectible card games that come out in serials that all the rich people rush to get, and all the people who like playing those games rush to get. Exactly. So you'd be like trading different yokai, like, oh, I've got 2 of the umbrella ghosts. Do you have... I wanted to mention quickly some other ghosts in Japanese folklore and from monster cards that should have a special mention. Sandal demons. Ugh. Get rid of your old shoes.
I love the morals behind some of these. Clean your shit up, or they'll turn into ghosts.
Lantern demons.
Nice.
Hammer girl. Ooh. Which is a hammer and a kimono. Ne, or the hair pulling of women monster.
Oh, I've
the
heard
sexist
of that one.
hair pulling monster. So yeah, that's my story. I wanted something like, because I was getting really scared while editing the podcast. I could hear like weird, I think I was picking up, what did they call it?
Oh, EVP.
I think I was picking up, we've been picking up EVP in our episodes.
We have picked up some weird stuff because, so what's been happening lately is that, so Cassie does a first round edit where she just, because we're doing this all, you know, from home kind of thing. Cassie mainly is doing the 90% majority of the work at the moment with all the sound engineering. So she does an edit, and then I proof listen to that edit, and then she's going to go back in and edit those again. So when we're listening to some of these episodes, we're hearing out for things we need to cut out or mistakes or, you know, just to make it all smoother and a nicer audio experience for you. But we pick up these weird mumblings and odd noises and talking that...
Most of the time, our partners, our significant others, aren't in the house. And it's on episodes recently, especially during this ghost one. I chose a light one because I couldn't handle all the editing of episodes where I know they were not here, but I can hear men's voices.
Maybe we're just picking up like neighbours or something, or like outside, and we just don't notice when we're chatting and recording that there is someone like mumbling
scary
outside.
Though. I was just like, I'm going to pick the silliest ghost I can find in the world. Japan wins.
Yeah.
So far. Have you got a silly ghost?
Have I got a silly ghost?
Have you ever heard, like, do you know any weird silly ghosts from around the world that are quirky?
I mean,
maybe they do.
I'm sure I've read things about like ghosts that do like weird stuff in pubs, like drink like someone's pint and stuff like that, like cheeky ghosts.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing as crazy as the fun ghosts of Japan. Collectible Pokemon ghosts of Japan.
I want to turn into a collectible.
Maybe we'll one day make a world-weary trading card game.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Even if it's just online, we can make it on blockchain or something. Make actual custom art that you do, and people can trade them. That'd be really cool.
One day we'll do something weird like that. Okay, so now things are going to get creepy again. Maybe, possibly a bit spooky after the light-hearted Umbrella Ghost section. So we're just going to have a little chat now about some of our own kind of mini experiences, see if we can investigate them a bit. I'm sure I talked about this in one of the first episodes, but I've never really had any major true ghost experiences. I think I'm pretty lucky in a way that, you know, I seem to be immune to ghost stuff. In the same way, you know, fleas don't bite me, ghosts don't mess with me. Even if ghosts exist in some capacity, I feel like I've got that feeling that I would be unable to see them or sense them.
Right.
It's a world that feels sort of blocked to me. I've never had any real ghosty kind of vibe. So I do want to talk about the only time that I think I experienced anything weird and ghosty, or in the kind of ghosty category. And this was when I was an undergraduate at university. And I'm pretty skeptical about this story. You know, I have my explanations.
Is this that house?
Yes.
Here we go. House.
This is the story of when I lived in a possibly haunted Welsh farmhouse.
Definitely haunted. I stayed the night there, and it was palpable, the energy.
I was going to say, you guys actually
I hated
came...
sleeping there.
You visited and you stayed with me for a weekend, I think, when I was living at this house, but you guys slept in the stable, which
it wasn't
probably
too bad.
wasn't haunted. I think that bit was safe.
When I slept I slept through the night, but I didn't like hanging out in that living area.
Oh. Anyway, to give everyone the full story, because I think we really need to set the scene with this one. So I lived absolutely in the middle of nowhere in West Wales. People love saying, oh, I live in the middle of nowhere, but this really is the middle of nowhere. So I was attending a very small, quirky university in a little Welsh town. There's no train station. It's a very isolated, interesting place. And during my second year there, me and my friends moved into this very pretty, traditional period Welsh farmhouse, which was about a 45-minute walk from the town. This house was part of an old working farm on a hill, and once you got up this big hill, you then had to go down this long gravel trackway to get to our house. Living in the house were, myself and 2 other girls. And then in the stable on the other side of the yard, that was where the 2 boys lived, my boyfriend and also our friend Ed. Luckily, they had cars, and my boyfriend had a 4x4 at the time. And if we hadn't had the uses of their chauffeuring service, we would have literally been doomed.
Completely isolated.
If they hadn't been able to drive us around. It was a really, it was a pretty long walk from the farm into the town. Plus, it's a really steep hill, absolutely no streetlights. It's a very rural location. So, great start. 5 students living on a weird old isolated farm in an already very isolated rural part of Wales.
How many times did I tell you when we were over there that it was the start of a horror film?
It totally was. It totally was.
I was like, the last thing I want to do right now is make out, Morgan. Okay, that we are not going to be those people.
Of course, I had to pick a university like this to go to. And it gets worse. The farmhouse was super cold all year round. There was no central heating, dodgy electrics. If you wanted to wash up, you had to boil the kettle. There was a hot tap in the bathroom, but you could have a lukewarm bath at best. No shower. The house was shaded by trees, so we barely got any sun. The fireplace didn't really heat the house up. It all just went straight out the chimney. There were no lights outside. If you went outside in the evening, then you're in a pitch black yard with trees all around. There were mice in the house. When we first moved in the first weeks, we found one of the sofas was full of live maggots. Whenever there was a big rainstorm, the kitchen floor flooded. The rain literally would come in through the walls and cracks around the edges of the windows.
Oh no.
It was a very with nail and eye existence. A lot of the time, we would walk to the stable where the boys lived and hang out there. Like, that was where we spent most of the time. I barely did anything else in the farmhouse except go to sleep
It
there.
is interesting that because the stable didn't feel weird. It was the main house that felt weird. And it is interesting that you ended up spending most of your time in the stable, even though it's a large house.
Yeah, and this was a tiny stable. It was literally
just a room,
box room with
it's a studio apartment,
a
essentially.
tiny studio apartment. So we all just spent most of our time in the boys' stable, playing Crash Bandicoot, watching Game of Thrones. And, they at least had these old-fashioned coin-operated electricity boxes there. So they had, fairly okay working heaters, and they actually had a decent hot shower. So, yeah, we literally spent all our time in that little stable. Anyhow, we all joked around that the farmhouse seemed a bit creepy sometimes. We heard weird noises from day one. None of us girls liked being in there alone, and we felt pretty vulnerable in there sometimes, even though there were, the 3 of us. In the first week when we first moved in, one of my friends was in the downstairs bathroom, which had a little window that looked out into the back garden, which, was basically just brambles. It was totally overgrown. we're on this steep hillside. It's essentially wilderness out of the back. And she noticed movement close to the bathroom window.
Oh.
And she realised that this weird-looking old man was stood out the back of our house looking into our kitchen windows.
Oh, gosh.
And she looked freaked out. And I was, like, upstairs, and she went and got me, and we went outside together, and I actually confronted this old man. I was like, you know, can I help you? And he was this crazy, like, scruffy little old Welsh man with, like, his hair was like little tufts of cotton wool, you know. He was like a little weird old man. And he's, you know, I can't do a Welsh accent to save my life, but he said something like, you know, I'm just seeing if you wanted some firewood delivered. And I was like, no, thank you. And then he said that he knew our landlady, who was she was the farmer, and he asked how long we'd been living in the farmhouse and how many of us were there. And I remember making a point of telling him that there were 2 guys living with us in the house, even though they were unstable, because he was being weird, you know. We were already kind of creeped out that he'd been looking in the windows round the back of the house. And
rather than going to the door and knocking.
It wasn't an easy bit of garden to get into. It was literally brambles.
Scary.
You had to, like, climb around through the brambles to get round the back of the house where that window was. You know, if you were just the friendly firewood merchant, then you knock on the front door, and if you don't get a response, you leave. You know, you don't climb into the bushes behind our house.
Or you let the landlady know who you have this relation with, this supposed relation with.
You don't peer in the back windows and then ask weird questions. So, just setting the scene, creepy stuff like that happened there a lot. It really was the plot of a, you know, teenage horror movie.
Did he go away?
Yeah.
See, Violet's really good at dealing with these types of people. That's crazy.
After the first term, one of the girls, we're going to call her H, she leaves to study abroad for a term. And then once she left, she decided she didn't want to return. And she also broke up with her boyfriend, who was a student as well. So it was a bit of an awkward situation. But, you know, we kind of understood why she wanted to stay abroad. H had the ground floor bedroom. And me and my friend Emma, we had the upstairs bedrooms in the farmhouse. So all H's stuff was left behind downstairs in her room. And what she did was she paid our landlady the rest of the rent, you know, for the rest of the year, so she could store all her stuff in that bedroom until her parents came to collect it at the end of the year. So, you know, that was all cool. We sorted that. But then it was kind of lonely. You know, it's in the farmhouse. It's just me and my friend Emma and sometimes my boyfriend. And that's when stuff starts getting weird.
Oh, no.
So I actually had to speak to Emma the other day to verify some of this and see if there's anything else she remembered. Because this is one of those, you know, it was one of those chaotic phases in life. We were all about 20 years old, and lots of these memories resurface when you start thinking about it.
Yeah.
You know, we start hearing lots of odd noises. We'd heard, like, weird noises before
house
in
noises.
the house. Yeah.
Old house noises.
But we were hearing odd noises, and they're often coming from H's vacant bedroom downstairs. We heard them enough that we actually would bring it up in conversation with each other sometimes, but, you know, we kind of brushed it off. We were both actually, you know, really used to living in very old houses in the countryside. We know it's creaky. We knew there were mice trotting around. I'm still fondly remembered for turning up at the start of term with buckets of rat poison that my dad had given me and putting mouse traps down. So I was that special
Excellent.
Student. But we would hear these noises all times of day and night.
What kind of noises were
So banging sounds, dragging or moving furniture sounds, almost always downstairs in the house. And sometimes, you know, I would actually investigate. I did think that it might be a farm cat or a massive rat, you know, is getting in somewhere and was, like, moving stuff around. But I never found any evidence of that. And we just dismissed it. It was, you know, I was out in the stable a lot with, you know, my boyfriend and Ed. Emma was out in town doing society activities a lot. And, you know, we would occasionally mention that we'd heard a noise to each other, but it just, I don't know, it just didn't really bother us for some reason. Then I start getting woken up at night by huge slamming noises.
Oh, no.
The first time it happens, I get out of bed, I check across the hallway upstairs, and my friend was asleep in her room. I crept downstairs, down this creaky
You are so
metal...
brave. You are so brave. I would have gone to H's. I mean, not H's, your other friends.
Ed.
I would have gone... I wouldn't have risked going downstairs until I woke up my
you'd
friend.
gone to Emma's room, right?
Yeah, I would have woken her up and been like, hey, you're too brave.
Yeah, well, I left my boyfriend would have been in, you know, we were sleeping in the same bedroom, so I just left him.
I couldn't...
I don't remember why I went down on my own, but maybe they didn't want to get up or something. But I vividly remember going down that metal spiral staircase, and it's very creaky, so I had to creak down into the living room, and all of this in almost complete darkness because the lights in the hallways didn't work. We only had lighting in our bedrooms, and then once you got all the way down to the front door, you could turn lights on for the downstairs rooms. So I did that in almost complete darkness, and I can see that the front door of the house is wide open.
Oh my god, I would shit myself.
Wind was blowing into the house, like strong wind, and like to the point there was like a newspaper or a letter or something blowing around above the table. And all I can see is pitch black outside because there's no lights. We're really in the middle of nowhere. There was no farmyard lighting or anything. And it was totally terrifying, but I just pulled the door closed, locked it, pulled the bolts across. This was a huge, heavy, old wooden door because this is an old, traditional house built of proper stuff. It wasn't broken in any way. We never had any problems with it. We always kept it locked at night. It even had, you know, bolt locks on the inside. So the first time it happened, I was like, one of us must have forgotten to shut the door properly or lock it. And the strong wind pulled it open in the night. And we all talked about it, you know, and we knew to make sure that it's properly shut and locked. Because, you know, more than anything, we were worried about getting burgled.
Yeah.
Then it happens again. I hear big bangs in the night. I wake up. I go down the stairs to check it out. The front door is wide open. Wind is howling through the house. I shut it and lock it. I'm like, there's something wrong with the door. Because, you know, we're in West Wales. We've got a lot of storms there because we're not far from the coast. Maybe really strong wind is like pulling open the door and the lock is kind of broken. So I lock it, and after that we check and we try locking it in the day, and then we try pulling and pushing at the door to see if it opens. Like, is there a weakness to the lock, or it's just like not fully locking when you put the key in?
Yeah.
So we're like pulling and pushing on it, and we can't get it to budge at all. We try the lock loads. It's not like rusty or like sticking or anything. We literally can't find anything wrong with it. It's all in working order. A solid,
someone's living in the house.
Strong door.
Someone's got a key.
The only thing then that I was thinking of was that my friend was either sleepwalking or sneaking outside to smoke late at night and forgetting to shut the door. But, you know, the boys didn't have keys to the house. So then we were kind of wondering if maybe someone was letting themselves into the house and then running out.
Ugh.
And it keeps happening, and it's now happening when there isn't any wind outside. No storms.
No.
My friend Emma was a really heavy sleeper, but I remember, you know, there were occasions where the banging noise of what we assume was that front door slamming open in the night was starting to wake her up too. And I think there were at least one or two occasions when we both went down in the night to look. So I started to feel really weird about it, especially because then it happened a couple of times when Emma was away. So that cancelled her out as the culprit of leaving the door open or opening it in the night. And, you know, when it was just me and my boyfriend at the house. And one time it happened when I was the only student at the farm. Everyone, including my boyfriend, you know, and Ed in the stable, had gone away, I think, for the Easter holiday early, and I was waiting for it to be picked up by a parent. and it opened in the night. And in the next morning, I actually called our landlady about it, because then, I was wondering if someone else, maybe a farm worker, was up to something sinister, like sneaking into the house with a key or something. But if I remember correctly, she was reluctant. She was a really nice lady, really, sensible, and nothing like weird about her. But she was really reluctant about having the lock changed, because apparently, the old key lock had broken, and that they'd had the lock actually changed the summer just before we moved in. And it was basically a new key lock. So, I just was then being really vigilant about making sure the door was properly locked from the inside, all the bolt locks across when I was there. And when I came back from somewhere, and obviously you can only have the key locking the door.
Yeah.
I was kind of paranoid someone might be in the house.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like whoever was sneaking in, and I could come across them. So I would be never go into the house on my own when I knew there was no one in there, kind of thing.
Oh my god.
This continued at least every couple of weeks until we moved out. The door would crash open in the dead of night, storm or no storm, wind or no wind. It got to the point where it was like, oh, the fucking door has opened again at 2 a.m. I would send my boyfriend down to close it. I'm sure there was at least one occasion where, I didn't even wake up when the door opened in the night. And I came down in the morning and was like, oh, great, better close the door. It's been open all night. And still, from time to time, me and Emma were hearing weird noises and bumps in the house, mainly from the vacant bedroom downstairs. There were so many times that we would say to each other, we'd both be upstairs, and we'd be like, oh, were you in H's room? No. Oh, it sounded like someone was in there. Or, oh, that's weird. I thought you were downstairs. I heard you down there. But, we'd been in our respective bedrooms upstairs the whole time. One time, we were both in the house, upstairs in our rooms, and Emma and I were packing in preparation of moving out, and we heard this noise downstairs that sounded like someone was moving the bed in the vacant bedroom. Like, they were literally dragging it, because it was a heavy, wooden bed. And Emma also heard it, and we were both, looked at each other like, what the fuck was that? It sounded like someone just, picked up the bottom of this heavy bed and just yanked it.
Oh, gosh.
Across this, stone floor. So we actually went down together to have a look. We'd heard this noise that sounded like the bed's being scraped across the floor quite a distance, but, there was nothing out of the ordinary. The bed was in place. By the end of the year, so we were spending almost all our time in the stable where the boys were. We pretty much only went to the farmhouse to sleep, and then we moved the fuck out at the end of the summer, found a safe, modern house for the final year. I've been in houses and I felt bad vibes. As you know, Cassie.
Yeah.
My first boyfriend lived in this old, dark little house in this little village next to 2 graveyards with his mum. And that house was supposedly haunted. A previous tenant committed suicide in the house, and when they moved into the house, his mum actually ended up having a drumming session there to drive out the bad vibes. There were moments that I was creeped out in that house, but I could explain it away. I had knowledge that there was a suicide and a haunting, so I knew that knowledge might make me jump to conclusions.
Yeah, exactly.
It was an old, creaky, damp house, badly lit, cold. All the factors that might make you feel spooked were there. I then helped his mum move into a former mental hospital.
I remember going there.
Yep, I know you guys visited.
It was crazy. One of my favorite moments, actually. You know how I feel about asylums and mental hospitals. I love it. Was every dream I had come true.
Just to explain what's going on here, she was going to be a property guardian to stop squatters moving into a defunct building, basically.
Exactly.
And you get cheap rent.
Stop terrible graffiti or otherwise
people setting fire to it. Yeah. And so that was definitely a spooky building. There were cages on the windows. creepy old electrics and lights from like the 1960s.
Weird shower rooms with weird stains.
Creepy like broken lifts or elevators. It's
Old bedpans.
straight out of Silent Hill.
It was great.
I definitely felt scared and, I felt bad vibes, but that's because it looked horrific in there.
Yeah.
Big, empty spaces, falling apart, essentially a building site. And we knew that it was a very old, defunct mental hospital. It was literally the set of a horror movie.
It was great.
Of course it was going to creep us out. What was different about my experience in the Welsh farmhouse, why did that spook me more than any other situation I've been in? I know what bad vibes feel like and I can mostly explain them away, but the loud noises and that sturdy door mysteriously unlocking and opening in the night felt very intentional. I don't know what was going on. Maybe someone was just fucking around with the door, or sleepwalking, or someone was sneaking in or out. But it definitely wasn't broken, that door.
It seems like psychological torture because it seems like someone could hurt you at any point if the door is open. That's how I feel. I would feel very unsafe and unsettled and would be constantly worried. Because even if it is the door caused by the wind or whatever factor, you don't know who's out there in that darkness, and it could be some crazy psycho killer out there just waiting for an opportunity, goes by this house, maybe hears that there's some college students living there. Start of a horror film. I felt very uncomfortable in the main house. I much preferred the stable where we got to sleep.
It totally trained me for being mega paranoid about the front door and locks and security.
Of course.
I've always been super pretty safety oriented, but this really freaked me out. So I'm now I get I feel awful if I do something like leave the key in the front door. That haunts me for months afterwards.
Yeah.
So I don't know what was going on. If it was something supernatural, I think Emma and I would agree that there were some weird vibes and weird emotional stuff happening. Because my friend H that left to study abroad, she had some stuff going on at the time. There was definitely some kind of chaotic, upset energy lingering.
Crazy energy.
And maybe just having these three young women together there, maybe it manifested in a poltergeisty way.
Maybe.
But it was, it was like something or someone was intentionally messing with us or, trying to get our attention. It didn't feel mischievous, I suppose. It just felt like earnest attention seeking. Or someone, if it was something ghosty, then maybe replaying some kind of drama that it wanted us to witness. But yeah, that is my only ghosty experience that ever really freaked me out.
Well, of course, in the first episode, I touched on my grandma's poltergeist. So if you want to know about that and you're new to the podcast, make sure to check out the pilot episode. Not quite our usual format, but the first episode. Because I am both skeptic and believer at the same time in a strange, weird way, I've always been able to try my best to come up with the explanation. There's one story in particular that I can think of that I simply can't explain. And there are other things that happen that I can't quite recall at the moment that I know is on the tip of my brain somewhere, but I'll have to wait until it comes up. So it's around 18 years old. I'm 18 years old. This is just before I've met Morgan, essentially, my husband. I'm in my attic bedroom. This is quite an old house for American standards. It's a Victorian era house. But we'd heard who'd lived in the house. We sort of had a chronology of the house. There were some weird things going on there, such as a weird two-way mirror and weird things we found in the attic. But we cleared the attic out and my dad made me a bedroom. And I had to decorate and everything. I went for this really stupid black and white theme that looked awful. It looks much better now the way my mom redecorated it. However, so one day, and my mind is sharp at this point. I'm 18 years old. I was, a decent student and excelled in areas that I liked. And my mind was super sharp, I'm quite skeptical in nature at that point, At that point, I was in complete denial of even, like, entertaining the idea that poltergeist was real. I was mostly like, oh, explain it away this way, this way, this way. So going backwards or forwards in my thinking, in my critical thinking. And one day I'm getting ready to go out to the beach or something. And I'm in my bathing suit up in the attic, and it's super hot. It's Maryland. Who knows what degrees is outside, but it's hot.
Swamp hot.
And I'm on the 3rd floor. Like, I'm in the attic, and I have 2 air conditioners running at any given time, and it's still not enough. And I just because I know I'm going to be in the water first, I'm wearing my bathing suit, and I'm going to put on my shorts and my tank top. And then what I want is to bring a spare pair of underwear, so after I'm done swimming, I can put on a fresh pair of skibbies and go about my day with my normal clothes. So I'm getting my spare clothes ready. I take with pride one of the new pairs of underwear that I'd gotten from some, I think, Abercrombie & Fitch at the time, because I had just become a waitress,
fancy.
So I was finally able to spend some of my own hard-earned cash on, it was a much better job than Domino's, essentially. So I was able to spend my tip money on a couple extra things. So I got these really cute stripy underwear, and I put it on a chair. I turn around to grab something, turn back around, it's gone. And I never saw that pair of underwear again. It happened in seconds. I've never been able to explain it.
Panty thief.
It was a panty thief ghost. And I know you had that weird Japanese story about the Japanese gentleman with the panty thief, but I didn't want to give it away because I was going to tell you it was the ghost version of your panty thief.
Oh, God.
If you would explain.
Very briefly, in Japan, I lived in a very nice apartment complex in the middle of nowhere. Again, I always like finding the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Whatever country I go to. And we'll just cut it short to say an elderly neighbour of mine was seen
scavenging
for women's underwear and walking across the car park in front of our apartment holding a pair of underwear that I believe were mine.
Yeah, because you had a little
blown off or taken off the washing line on my balcony.
But yeah, it was basically the ghost version of that. I never had any other strange incident. I remember when I first moved into the house, we all had to sleep in the creepy rooms. It's a creepy big Victorian house. It's got a creepy fireplace, and it's just I came from a trailer where it's very and not even a double wide, a single wide. Okay, so to go from that to, of course, you're going to be apprehensive, especially as young as I was. I was just a teenager, 13 maybe, and even after the first night, I didn't feel so creepy. Usually when I move into a new place, that first night's a bit apprehensive. But what happened, nothing else ever happened. We knew the chronology. There's some old people that died there. And, of course, some rich families. It was a house built by, a doctor dude from the hospital nearby. And so it was very creepy. I had quite literally placed them with pride on this chair, turned to grab something, turned back, and it was gone. And I've never been able to explain it.
Ghosts need pants.
No one was in the room. It was just very weird.
A ghost with great taste in underwear. Maybe it was like just a girl ghost who's like, oh, I'll take them.
It didn't feel malicious. Nothing happened before or after that. And it was just strange. Very strange.
Or maybe it was a strict old lady ghost that was like, no, these are far too inappropriate for a young woman like her. And snatch them away. Okay, so you've heard some of our favourite ghost stories, and you've heard some personal ghost stories. Let's go then for a brief verdict on ghosts. Let's solve this once and for all. Cassie, can you sum up your feelings on ghosts?
I just don't know. I don't want to poo-poo on anything. I love hearing ghost stories. It's one of my favorite things because it creeps me out. But I don't ever want anyone to feel that I would think they were bullshitting. I like ghost stories. So that's my verdict.
Yeah.
It's part of our culture.
I will be perfectly honest and say that I'm very much on the fence.
Same, yeah.
You know, I want to believe, but I can't because I haven't had a strong ghost experience myself. I'm open to the idea that there could be something more. That there are things that our minds might not be able to conceive, or maybe, you know, some people are capable of experiencing things that other people can't, that there are unknown forces, or even, you know, weird interdimensional parallel universe stuff going on. But even if ghosty stuff isn't real, I am totally fascinated by ghost mythology and culture and why people experience ghosts. And that's why we do this podcast.
Yeah.
So, guys, send your true ghost encounters or your photographs of ghosts.
Have you ever been sitting on the toilet and a ghostly figure dressed in green walks by?
Maybe you are a ghost. Tell us what it's like in purgatory. Maybe you faked a ghost sighting and you want to tell us about that. Maybe you shot a ghost in the face with a revolver.
No, Captain.
Maybe you were unlocking my front door at night in Wales.
And you'd like to confess now and just, you know, just say sorry and water under the bridge.
Send them in to worldwearypodcast@gmail.com and maybe we'll chat about them at some point in the future. Until next time. Goodbye.